great to be with you all here, even under these very strange circumstances. I'm dialing in here from a beautiful sunny North Yorkshire, which is fantastic. Quick introduction: my name is Steve Scott, Global Head of Workforce Management and Analytics for Standard Chartered. Standard Chartered, if you're not familiar with it, other than the name on the front of the Liverpool shirt, a global bank of about 90,000 colleagues, predominantly in Africa and Asia and developing markets. And prior to that role, I joined Standard Chartered in October last year. Prior to that, I had a similar role at Lloyds Banking Group. For the session that I've got the next 10 minutes to look at, I want to explore some of the use cases that I've been using in Standard Chartered, or I've become aware of, talking to my peers, that we've been using to highlight the value of workforce analytics through this pandemic. I'll also look at some of the potential use cases I see for people analytics teams to use as we emerge out of this crisis and move into the new norm, and a couple of thoughts on enablers to leveraging value in the short term. But what are the things we've been up to? I'm sure either my team or some of yours. Well, one of the first things we had to do was understand where our colleagues were. As we were moving them from base locations into working from home scenarios, we needed to understand their working status. Were they working base sites, different sites, home? And we were also, of course, very keen to understand the health status. So put a lot of mechanisms in place, originally manually, to get things up and running, but then over time we've automated that. But we wanted to know if they were showing symptoms, if they were isolated, if they were, if they were hospitalised, and all of that aggregated data was captured, brought up to the exec level to help them navigate the business through the crisis. Where were their operational challenges? Where were the colleague challenges in terms of well-being that we needed to wrap our arms around? That then connected into contact tracing, of course. So as soon as we knew that somebody was showing symptoms, we needed to put in protocols around contact tracing, identifying colleagues they've been in touch with, deepening of officers and the like. And it was the teams such as ours that the business were coming to help with that, to bring in the data and the processes to facilitate that. Not what we were expecting to do at the beginning of 2020. As we kind of overcame those initial challenges, we then started to want to do continuous listening. And I'm sure many of you have launched pulse surveys to understand how colleagues are feeling as they're going through this crisis. How are they responding to the impacts of such drastically changing working conditions? So we used pulse surveys to understand their sentiment, their mood. Were they getting the right communication? Were they getting the right support from leadership? Were they getting the right support in terms of technology and dealing with Zoom and BlueJeans or whatever other VC devices? What could we learn from our colleagues to help us take further actions? I'm sure, like us, we're also looking at some of the impacts that we were seeing, and one that we saw was colleagues were cancelling holidays. We needed to undertake analysis of leave. We could see relative to previous years that we were building up increasingly amounts of leave to be undertaken, and that helped inform HR policy and changes to HR policies going forward. And then equally, attrition. Attrition in Standard Chartered is reducing through the crisis. People aren't leaving as you would expect, and so we needed to understand attrition trends and predict forward using analysis to see what would that mean for us in terms of our headcount and our numbers at the year end, and how did that match to our budgets. So a whole raft of things that emerged. It really threw the people analytics team into the spotlight in helping HR navigate through. One other one that was interesting that I saw was capability matching. So as organisations were seeing that there was reduced demand in one area of their operation, but increased demand in another, they were using a capability matching tool that they developed to see which roles, which people could move where there was low demand into those high demand areas, which I thought was quite innovative. In terms of looking forward, then, how do we see workforce analytics team helping as we emerge through the crisis? The first one, and relevant given the charity we're supporting here today, is what I call well-being analytics, which is a broad term for all of the analytics we can do that will help support the well-being of our employees and our colleagues. It can be things such as analysing the effectiveness of any well-being tools that we put in place. Are the take-ups there that we expected? Is the feedback in line with what we would want it to be? What can we learn about how those tools are being used to revise and implement better solutions if they're not quite working? Wellbeing analytics in terms of understanding, back to that sentiment piece about working from home. What support do we need to put around colleagues who maybe we don't need them to come back into the office going forward? Maybe they do need to, we can take advantage of an opportunity for them to work more fully from home. But that equally then creates some challenges from a wellbeing perspective too. So analytics to make sure that we're picking the right roles to stay working from home, and that we're not forcing people into those situations where their role doesn't fit for that working pattern. I also see an opportunity for organizational network analysis or relationship network analysis. And this idea of working out through that technology, through that type of analytics, to understand how work is getting done. And if you can understand how work was getting done before people started working from home so prolifically, and then how it's changed, you can use that to help determine which roles are most suited to remote working or office working or hybrid working, where you have flexibility to move between office and home. So organizational network analysis, I think it will be really useful in the months ahead. How do we remain collaborative, connected as an organization when we're more disparate than we've ever been in terms of our locations? Employee experience and employee listening, I think, are going to ramp up in the months and years ahead, actually. Colleague journeys are changing dramatically. I had somebody in my team who joined recently, joined in the crisis. And so he was onboarded into an empty office. And what an incredible experience. It's not what we'd planned for our onboarding experience, but actually listening to colleagues through whichever channels you're using, and using that with an analytics support to think about the journeys and the moments of truth and the moments that matter for colleagues as we return to this, well, the new norm, as I've heard it called, will be really important. Strategic workforce planning, if any of you are doing that, I think this is going to accelerate the need for SWP. Strategic workforce planning, the future of work. Sometimes businesses resist participating in that type of exercise. They see it, well, it's the future. I don't need to do it now. I need to concentrate on the here and now. Actually, the fact that we're all talking to each other like this proves that the future is here now. And so any plans that you have for strategic workforce planning, bring them forward. As we return back to our new norm, the implications on size, spend, site, the skills is more critical, and shape is more critical than ever. So acceleration of SWP. I think as we use more and more digital products in this new world, whether it's digital learning, remote coaching, whatever it might be, talent marketplaces that connects people digitally with people with skills, with those with opportunities internally. I think HR analytics can be used to support the evaluation of the effectiveness of those tools. Again, using a combination of techniques, but working out what it is that we need to do differently to leverage value and actually evidence impact of those new ways of working. A big thing I think analytics can help with as we move through this crisis and beyond is leadership, actually, and understanding what leadership capabilities will be required in this now rapidly accelerating future of work. I'm sure you've all heard of VUCA and the volatility, the uncertainty, the change and the ambiguity that we're working in. This is probably the most VUCA period of our lives. So what are the leadership capabilities that we require to build, to dial up, and then unleash across our organizations to make sure that we are supporting the colleagues, our employees, with the appropriate level of leadership capability. And then I think, of course, business. Let's come back to the business and the business impacts. Workforce analytics can be really important in helping to resolve business challenges, whether that's productivity, whether it's client retention, client engagement, whatever it might be. Don't lose sight of how analytics can inform decisions to support business opportunities or business challenges. And depending on your industry, your organization, those could be significant right now. And HR analytics teams will have a really pivotal role to play in helping their organizations navigate through those challenges. So how do we leverage the value that workforce analytics can offer? I'm sure anybody on this call is as passionate as I am about the opportunities that workforce analytics can provide, but sometimes unlocking that potential is difficult. So just a couple of thoughts. One is, I think you have to understand the business problem, the business challenge, and the context, the organizational context. I see far too many times when an analytics team or a data team jump straight into the data, and they'll go away and they'll work on fantastic modeling and some fantastic analytics, and they'll come back, and what they present they're very proud of, but it just doesn't land. It doesn't give what the stakeholder required because they've totally missed the business context. So keep that at the forefront of your mind as you're talking to stakeholders and translating into analytics requirements. But what is the business problem? I think a second is around being prepared to use the data that you've got. If you wait for perfect data, it will never come. And actually, there's a momentum now that's building in terms of the value of people analytics to support HR functions. We need to keep that momentum going. And if we stall to say, oh, we can't do that, we need more data, then we'll go backwards and miss the opportunity. So don't wait for the perfect data. Use the data that you have and caveat accordingly that you may be missing certain aspects of the data, but you can get value from the data that you already have. And finally, I think more than ever, this period has shown us of the importance of being agile, hugely collaborative with people that you might not normally be talking to in your organizations, but collaborative, but more than that, even this spirit of agility, the can-do attitude, the kind of positivity of mindset, and going with things like a minimum viable product, not waiting for perfection, but taking an MVP and say, this is good enough for now, let's get something to market, and then we'll evolve and we'll iterate over time. That I think we've seen a lot of that in my team in Standard Chartered over the past few months. Seen much more of that willingness to just get something out that we'll do and we'll iterate it, but being agile is really helping to unlock the value of analytics. So I think that is my time up. Hopefully that was useful, and I'm now going to pass on to